a second.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, guys.
Hey, sorry I'm a little late again.
Oh, you're fine. I just want to make sure I had the right link. Hi, Charlie. Okay, give me a kiss.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Julia.
Hi, Gary. Hi, Charlie.
Okay.
Hello,
Hi,
everybody.
Gary. Randy.
This is kind of like a romper room
Hey, girl.
where they're like, I see
Say
you.
hi to
and
Gary for us.
I see you.
Oh, that's my cousin.
Oh, I couldn't see his face.
All right, babe. I love you.
Hi, Charlie. Hi, Tom. Hi, Tyler. Hi, Cameron.
Hello.
And I got Tammy here today with
Hey,
me.
Tammy.
Hi, Tammy. What's up?
Oh,
She's sitting on the little girl chair. Because I'm little.
all right. Tyler, I don't think we've ever heard you talk. Do you have a microphone? Did we hear you talk? Maybe, did we? I don't know.
Yeah, my microphone's there.
Hello there,
good,
sir.
Good to see you.
Tom and I are in the same room, so it's echoing.
Oh, gotcha. Not a problem.
Tammy.
I'm just trying to get everything on my screen the right way it's supposed to be. Okay.
Hey, Charlie, where's Rue? Cool.
Hey, Rue.
Our dog.
Hello, Rue. She's looking the wrong way. She's not confused. She's on squirrel patrol.
It is. Activate. Bring this down here.
Oh, it's kitty cam.
Whew. All right, I think I'm finally ready. Maybe not. I'm gonna go get a drink really fast. I'll be right back.
I had to call Cameron today because something went screwy with my screen and I lost all my toolbars.
Oh, yeah?
I had no clue what I did. Oh,
Well,
it's back.
when I first started working on computers, I worked for this embroidery company in Minnesota. And I had the design software I was working with on this computer. It was called Micrographics Designer. And I decided to go in over the weekend to learn the software, to really impress them, to show them I was dedicated to learning. And I don't know how I did it because I'm a computer person now, and I still to this day have no idea how I messed a computer up that bad. But for some reason, I just started dragging folders into different folders. Like there was no reason to do such a thing. So dangerous, so dumb. And at that time, you know, you had to have a person on site come in, and the guy had to come in and he charged like $1 a minute to work on that computer. Yeah.
I had shut mine down and I turned it back on and my screen looked completely different and
Oh yeah.
I couldn't even, it didn't even have any of the Memorial Designer icons or nothing. I was just, and I tried going into Windows. I tried looking for help. I can read that stuff, but it's like reading Russian to me. I mean,
Yeah,
I am just
it
a
takes a while to
total
get used to that.
dinosaur. So I'll call Cameron with my panic mode.
But he's a pretty smart dude.
Tom and Tyler, what program did you guys use either with or before Memorial Designer?
MonuCAD.
Okay, okay.
I used MonuCAD and Gerber.
And we have Gerber. Tammy and I do.
And I get back and there's all this swearing going on.
No, we said, what did we do in our previous lives?
Oh, that's weird.
I'm just teasing.
It's true. We were just talking about Windows Vista. No, just kidding.
Windows ME, that was my favorite. Okay, everybody on. All right, well, everybody ready to get started?
Yes.
Ready? Hey, Cameron, I got a quick question.
Questions are not allowed.
Are you planning on being at the Choctaw Casino in June?
Hoping to be.
Okay,
It's a hope.
okay.
There's yeah. I got all the paperwork so that I could sign up for it. So I'm hoping. I'm gonna share my screen number 4. Everybody see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
I've got you.
All right. Okay, so last time we talked about the property bar. Anybody have any questions, concerns, things you like about it, things you don't like about it? Anything that didn't make sense? Once again.
I love it. I think it's a great property bar.
And I didn't watch the first 15 minutes that I missed, but I'm going to.
Oh,
So.
you know, Julia, it's not your fault. I didn't actually post it yet, so.
Oh,
Yeah, you wouldn't have been able to anyway.
good.
Will you post it today?
Yeah, I just got the last Friday one converted over, and I'll post that one as soon as I'm done, and then I'll do the other one as well. I was asking Charlie yesterday if I should edit out any of the commentary and stuff that we talk about up front, and to make the videos smaller for those that go back and rewatch them. I don't know if it's worth the time to edit it all out, or if we should just keep all the commentary in the videos. What are your thoughts?
People can fast forward if they don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
I think if you just leave it in there, people can choose to watch, rewatch, fast forward, choose what they want.
Okay.
For your time, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it takes less time for me to just hit the upload button than it does to go through and edit out stuff, so.
And I think there's a difference between an actual training video and a group training video.
Right.
And when someone's watching the group training, they get the benefit of all of our tomfoolery.
Yeah. Especially on April Fool's Day.
Yes.
We should be full of it today.
Mhm.
All right. Well, I'll just upload them then and not worry about whether or not my hair looks good. Right?
It looks great.
Okay. So the next toolbar down is the Memorial Designer toolbar.
Best one ever.
My thought was to either cover that one today or to cover the toolbox, which are these tools over on the left. By a show of hands, who wants the MD toolbar? One, just Julia. She's the only one. All right, who wants the toolbox? One. Now everybody has to vote. There's 2 choices.
No, I want the top bar.
I don't know what I'm voting.
I think the
Do you want
toolbar is,
this bar today, or do you want this bar today?
The left bar is more basic than the top one, but
Well, we gotta learn it anyway.
either one.
you're gonna need the toolbar to do the other stuff, though, wouldn't you say?
All right. Well, we'll cover the MD toolbar since we're working our way down. We'll cover that one. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. So the very first button on here, color chooser. The reason that I made color chooser is because before you can apply a granite fill, you have to have a grayscale applied to your object first. Excuse me. So there are a number of different grayscales that work. I usually either use these buttons over here or I use keyboard shortcuts. That's another reason I made the color chooser, is because I've assigned keyboard shortcuts and I've also named them so that you can kind of see what they are as opposed to just a 10, 20, 30% kind of thing. But really what these buttons are doing is just assigning a fill color, which you can also do over here. Okay, so we've got 10% gray would end up being frosted. So I'm just going to take and draw a box, and then I'll come and fill it with frost. And then, actually I don't want to do a box for this one. I'll go like this. Okay, so then the next one is rock pitching, which I've already got the base by default is assigned to be rock pitching because I built it with a shape builder. The stone itself is polished. The rough rock, that's what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to fill in this area here, and then I'm going to tell it to be rough rock. Okay, and then the last one I will do, just draw a little bit more there, fill that in. And then the last one here, oops, hit the wrong button. I will do a starburst fill. Okay. Oh, and then I'll also do this. Text that's black and text that's white. Okay. So all of these fills we're able to get to from this, or if you know the keyboard shortcut, you can just do that, and the keyboard shortcuts are listed after it. Or you can use these over here. So 100% white, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, or 100% black. Those are your grayscales that you assign first. That's what tells granite fills how to work. Now, one downside to using this is that if you have a shape that has an outline, just like these ones that I created, they're going to maintain their outline because this is only doing the fill color. It's not doing an outline color. So in order to get rid of the outline, if I want to, I would select those and I would simply right click on this X here, and that gets rid of the outline because the outline color is a right click. If I right click blue, if I right click red, if I right click orange, that's going to set my outline color. But I want no outline, so I'm going to right click on this top swatch, and that's now no outline. Okay. So now that we've assigned everything a grayscale, then when we come over and choose a granite color, it's going to apply that granite color.
Wow.
So 10% goes frost, 20% goes rock pitched, 30% goes polished, 40% goes rough rock for the face of the stone, 50% goes to this starburst fill. Now, the reason that we've got two rock pitching fills is because if we had done this one, and if I just fill it with rock pitching, okay, and then I refill it, the way that these fills are built is to basically fit a 3-foot wide by 6-inch tall base. And so when you stretch that into a little area like this, then it doesn't look right, right? And so that's why we created a new fill set specifically for being able to do rock pitching, or rough rock for the front of your stone. So that's why we've got a rough rock here, because hopefully that looks a little bit nicer than the squished way that this does it. Because they fill differently. The way that these ones fill is it fits however big my design is, however big my shape is, the rock pitching fits to that size of stone. Whereas the rough rock one, what it does is it tiles. So it doesn't squish, it just keeps tiling, just like polish and frost do, if that makes sense.
So they're really the same thing, is that right, Cameron?
They're
They're
two
the same
different
thing,
fills.
they just fill differently.
No, they're actually two separate fills. I've made them different.
Yeah, but I mean, it's essentially it's rock pitch. Rough rock is
Essentially,
rock pitch.
it's meant to look the same. Yeah, I mean on your
Yeah,
stone,
okay.
on the stone itself, you know, your physical stone, it's going to be the same thing. It's just
Yeah.
that area where you've left it rough. Yep. But they act differently so that you can, you know, fill in bigger areas without squishing it in. Okay, so any questions on color chooser?
No,
Now, what about the situation where a person's like myself is using the dark mode?
Okay. So dark UI is going to invert these because that's what dark UI does, is inverts the icons. So white's actually going to be a black icon and black's going to be a white icon. So as far as the icons go, they're going to be inverted. That's just the way that dark UI works. But
okay, so like when I saw Charlie's workspace, his is dark. Is that what y'all are talking about?
yeah, so if I go up to tool,
Okay.
options, customization, and I say theme, dark or black, then it switches so that everything goes dark. But in order to do that, all they do is they invert the icons. Because if they didn't invert the icons, they'd have to have a whole other icon set for everything. And there's like 4,000 icons or something in CorelDRAW. So they would have had to go back and redraw 4,000 new icons just for dark. So instead what they chose to do is just invert them. So now you can see white is black and black is white on in the colors there.
I can make mine pink.
You can make yours pink, I guess, if you want to. The flower turns pink, you see?
Show me pink.
Show you pink. You can make, if you
Just change the, you
If-
could do the toolbar.
you
or
can
the,
your outline, you can do your window border,
Yeah,
like
that would probably be best.
some magenta-y pink.
That's my favorite.
Yes, you could do that. Now, why on earth somebody would want to, I don't know, but you could.
Somebody that's got 6 sons.
You could do your desktop too pink if you really want to see pink all day.
Oh, that would be awful to have it that bright. The reason that I have mine white now, but for a long time I was running it darker just because I would stare at the screen all day. And then I felt like, oh, it was a little bright. So, but if you have it any levels of gray, then you're going to lose things that are filled in a polish mode or, you know. So, yeah.
So I use the medium UI, or theme, and then as far as the border, I'm a fan of gray stuff, but I use 79, 79, 79 as the color, just because I was born in 1979, so I thought that'd be fun. But that's what I do.
Okay.
Yes, you can change the color. I don't use medium, I use light. I take that back. I used to use medium, but for some reason, Corel thought it would be a good idea to make the rulers white on medium, and I don't like that, so I go back to light now. So I do a light theme with a darker window border. Okay. Not blue. Now you messed me up, Charlie. See, yeah, you took me away.
Well, I thought if we should mention it before somebody calls and says, why are my icons backwards?
Yeah,
I think that was me that made that call to you.
I think that's the only person that ever has, but it's okay. It's a good question.
My border is pink.
Are you so happy?
I'm so happy.
It is nice that they give you customization ability, I would say for sure. Okay, so as far as color chooser, that's what it does. The whole point of it is to give you names instead of percentages and give you keyboard shortcuts so that you can be faster. The next thing over, fill grayscale. Hey. I'm going to, Brandy, if you're okay, I'm going to open up one of your designs because
Sure.
that way I can kill two birds with one stone and fix the design while we're talking here.
Right on.
So Brandy's got a bunch of designs that her husband has designed in General CAD. So I'm going to bring in one of his DXF files here. And you can see his DXF file comes in with just outlines and no fills, right? So I'm actually going to skip. I'm going to skip to the end of this toolbar almost to this button here, which is called Dxf Fix. And I'm also going to show the objects just in case. So this one, it doesn't actually matter. Everything he's got is on layer 1, but often when you bring in designs from other companies, from other programs, there's going to be multiple layers. And I like to work only on one single layer myself for the most part. And so when you click this Dxf Fix button, what it does is one would consolidate any layers if there were multiple ones and just make them all as a single layer. And then what it does is it fills or it closes any gaps. So if there were gaps in this stone or in the design, and let me zoom in here, you'll see the way that this was designed, the way that the DXF comes in is there's a bunch of multiple little pieces here, okay? So what Dxf Fix does is it takes everywhere that there's a gap and it tries to combine it and join the nodes where those gaps are. It actually does join curves. I clicked the wrong button. It actually does join curves in 3 different modes. It does it on a I'm going to start over here. It does it on a really small, like 0.01 inch gap tolerance, and then it goes to maybe 0.1, and then it goes to 1 inch. So it does 3 different join curves at 3 different gap tolerances so that it can try to close in as much as possible in the design, okay? After it closes, the next step that it does is this button here, which is called Fill Grayscale. Now, Fill Grayscale, what it does is it will take whatever you have selected and it will combine all of the pieces that are inside the largest shape. And so it thought this is the largest shape, which it is. So it took this largest shape and made that black. And then it took all of the inside shapes and made them 10% gray and combined them together. It doesn't work on a full layout because we haven't built it to work that way. So if you use Dxf Fix and it fills in your designs this way, then you need to manually go back and say, okay, this is supposed to be polished. So I'll just hit 6 on the keyboard. Same thing as coming here and hitting polish. And then the inside pieces, I'm going to run Fill Grayscale on again, and you'll see what happens here when I hit Fill Grayscale. Now what it does is it takes all the inside pieces of that design, combines them together, turns them to 10% gray, which is frost, and then gives it just a black outline. So the reason that it didn't do that before was because we had this extra shape. The stone shape itself, it thought was the outline of the design because it's the largest thing. We haven't built the code yet to be smart enough to recognize shapes. Hopefully someday that will be something that we can build in there, but for now, that's how it works.
Okay, Cameron, let me ask you a question.
Yep.
So on this this lamb, if I wanted to pull the lamb out and put a heart over it, can I unjoin these or ungroup them?
Yeah, so they this is where most people get tripped up is the difference between grouping and combining. Okay. So these are combined objects, which now create one single object. They're not a group, they're a combined object. You can do what's called breaking apart the object. Okay, so if I come up to this toolbar, break apart is an option. So if I break it apart, what that does is it breaks up all of those pieces into all of their little individual pieces. So I can look, you know, at all of these. What did I do? All of those. I think I just killed it. Give me just a second here. All of the little pieces then become their own objects as opposed to being combined to anything else. Okay. Give it just a second here to start back up. All right, I'm gonna start over, guys. Was it 53? Is that the one we're on? Yeah. All right. And if you notice, my color scheme went back to blue. Because CorelDRAW crashed, it didn't have time to set my workspace defaults. And so it went back to whatever it had been set to before.
So that's the color that Gary's doing it in, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, so I don't know. I don't know if he's done it in that color or if it just imports as this cyan or whatever this color is, but yeah, I don't know if on his end if it's the same colors or not, but
I want to say it is.
Is it? Okay.
I
So
believe.
to answer your question though, yes, you can pull that out. If this were me and I was doing the design work and making these designs, I would actually take the sheep itself. Since you've already got it broken into pieces, we can take that sheep and separate it from the rest of the design. Okay, so I'm just going to take the sheep and I'm going to hit Control X to cut it. And this is what we had talked about a few days ago, how you can cut something, put it in memory. It's on the clipboard now, and then we can do, you know, things to mess with the design. So if I hit Dxf Fix now, what it's going to do is it's going to close in this gap and this gap. Not quite what I want to do. Probably could have just done this manually. I'll delete this line, delete this line, and then we'll grab just these two nodes and do what's called a join. We're just going to join them together with J on the keyboard.
Cool.
And then I'm going to delete those nodes because I don't really need them. So I'm left with just my rectangle. Okay. Now, if I paste, now I'm back to having that guy just like that. And you'll see here, we have a gap. The gap is there because we've now extended that line, right? So if we run Dxf Fix again, all of a sudden it's going to, it's going to try to combine all of these pieces together, which is not really what we want, but if we look at it, it's filled in that gap there and it's filled in that gap there, but you can also see it did something wonky right here. Okay. And so sometimes when you run Dxf Fix, you have to pay attention to the way that it closes things, because if there was something odd in the design, it may not know exactly where it's supposed to close things up, or, you know, it may try to connect things if there was like a stray node or a stray piece. So sometimes you'll end up with things like that, where you've got a, you know, triangle in the middle of nowhere. So you just kind of pay attention to that stuff. But we'll go back and show you now. I'll grab this and hit Fill Grayscale, and I'll grab this guy and I'll hit Fill Grayscale. I could have done both at the same time, but I just did them individually. But what that does is it combines all of those inside pieces and makes them 10% gray and just gives you an outline. So now if I move him back up there to where he was before, and now he's not in front of the panel. And so this is where I would use the keyboard shortcut Shift Page Up or come to object and align, order, and then say, so I use to the front of the layer and the back of the layer. Charlie the other day was showing you guys how to use control home and control end, which works off of the page as opposed to the layer. But because I usually only work on one layer, I just use the layer button. I'm going to combine all those. So now this guy is by himself. And this is the difference between grouping and combining, okay? I can take this piece and group it. So now the outline and the inside of that sheep move together, but they can retain their own properties. So you can have a frosted inside portion and a black outside portion, but they move together when you grab them. If I were to combine them together, they become one single piece, and the frosted part basically cuts out away from the black part, so you end up seeing what's underneath it as opposed to being able to fill that in, and you only have one fill, so just the outline is getting filled. So if you want to, you can group things together so that you can move them around. The panel itself and the outline you could group if you wanted to. You could have those grouped. You could have groups of groups. So now we've got the panel and the sheep grouped. That's why there's an ungroup all button, is because you can have groups of groups. So if I had this group here and I had this one here, I've now got two groups. And if I look in the objects, you'll see a group of two objects and a group of two objects, okay? I can take this group and this group and group those, and now I've got a group. I've got two groups nested inside that group. That's why there's the ungroup all. If you just ungroup, it'll take them out of that first group, but it's not going to ungroup the nested ones. I know that's a lot of group talking, but does that make sense? Or
Yes, it
is
does.
confusing at all? So that's the biggest thing I think that trips people up, is grouping versus combining, because they're two different things. They work differently. And when you refer to them, you should refer to them differently, because ungrouping and grouping, combining and breaking apart are actually different things. So what Fill Grayscale does is it simply takes whatever you have selected, finds the largest object, turns that black, and then every other object that's inside those, it will combine them together, turn them 10% gray. We used to have to do that all manually, and so that's why we created the button, was so that you can do it all with one click. The other thing that it does is if you are ever in grayscales or fills or whatever, and you want to get rid of them all so that you just see outlines, you can hit V, which goes to wireframe. Okay, so you can change your view, but that's not actually changing the color of your pieces. So if you want to, you can select something, hold Shift, and click on Fill Grayscale. And what that does is it gets rid of all of the fills and just gives it a black outline. In case you ever needed to, that's a quick way to outline everything. Another way to do the same thing is if you select everything, you can left click on the no fill, you can right click on the no fill, and then you can left click on the black, or sorry, right click on the black, and it would do the same thing. It's getting rid of your fills and outlines, and then it's just giving you a black hairline outline, or whatever your default outline size is. But I decided to make this one shift click just because it's doing the opposite of, what it was doing before. Does that all make sense?
A question.
Yep.
So since this is Gary's drawing and his last lines are 0.78, when you import these, will it import as his last line size? Yeah. Okay, that's awesome.
So it's going to come in however he drew it. Okay, that's how it's going to come in, which is 0.078 inches for your blast lines. If I were to change this panel, so if I go like this and grab the panel and then I come over to panels and I say I wanted a double line instead of a single line. A group, yeah, I need to ungroup it first. So if I wanted to turn this into a double line, okay, it's going to mess with the outline thicknesses because, so now you can see it's 0.09. The reason for that is the Docker is set to have a 0.09 hard line instead of 0.078. So you would need to change this setting to 0.078 in order to match it.
Okay.
The same thing for these tools up here, line width, blastable, and bold, and frosted outline. These all have settings too. So if I hold Control and click on any one of these, it'll pull up the settings for those. So I can change any one of these to 0.078 to match your desired line thicknesses. And I would just change them 0.078 and save that as my default. Come to this one, 0.078, change, oops, 0.078. So now that I'm working this way, then it would actually make all of my lines 0.078 now. I don't know what happened there. Go back. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yep, but yeah, so they should come in and show up just the way that they were before. However he created it. I wonder if interesting. Sorry, I stopped here for a second to see if I've found a bug, which I might have. I'll have to play with that. You know, we recently changed the panels and spacing stuff to allow the end spacing and panel spacing and inside options. It used to be that you could select a panel, change your panel style, and hit apply, and then it would change that panel style. But it's doing it for both options, which is not what it's supposed to do. So I'm gonna have to look at that a little bit further. I don't think it is because of, I'll have to look into that. Sorry to get distracted, but I always have to look for bugs while I'm playing with stuff. Okay. Anybody confused on what fill grayscale does?
A real quick question, but based off the bug thing, I thought, sorry to go off a beaten path. Every so often when I'm doing something and there's a problem of an error, sometimes it's me doing something, it might crash, and then there's that option to send the information to Memorial Designer. How do you want the people, the designers, Memorial designers, to use that reporting software? What, maybe share what that does? So
basically what it does is if you click yes, it sends a report as to what line of code errored out. And so it helps us to figure out where people are seeing errors, where they're crashing, and kind of whittle down what caused that crash. So if you can send the error reports, that's great. If not, you know, that's fine too. But every time you error report back to us, then we can go back and look through and try to whittle down, you know, what's crashing and why it's crashing.
yeah, so if you ever see that, it's okay to hit okay, and that's good information for Cameron to have to make the program better and more stable.
Yeah.
So thanks ahead of time.
And so funny thing is, the last time I got one of those and it asked me to error report, the error report itself wasn't working. So I need to crash it somehow and see if I can, you know, see if it's working, but we'll keep trying. Good question though. Second point of confusion that some people have run into is this is called fill grayscale. Over here in fills, this one here is called to grayscale. And so sometimes people are confused as to what the difference is between this one and this one. Okay. The difference is fill grayscale is meant to let you take a shape that doesn't have any fills at all and fill it so that it's appropriately 10% gray and 100% black, so that they'll fill in with your grayscales or with your granite fills. So that's what this one is for, is to help you fill those things in initially. The to grayscale button, what that one's for is if you've got a design like this and you've already applied granite fills, if you want to remove those granite fills and just get back to the grayscale version, then you can click on this and it's really removing, it's not telling it to forget that those fills existed, it's just going back to the grayscales instead of the granite fills applied. Okay. So there are two different options, two different functions, even though they're named very similarly. That's what those two do there. Does that all make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the next one over is what's called knockout. Knockout we created because there are occasions when you want to design to show through, instead of being frosted, you want a certain part of the design to be polished. This isn't a great example, but let's say we had this sheep, okay? And we wanted his hair to be polished instead of frosted, okay? I'm going to do this to show you what it does so that you realize why it does what it does. If I use knockout right now and click on this, it's going to knock out, it's going to take every one of these things and combine it to the black object that shows underneath, except for this piece right there. The reason for that is because these ones, they're all connected. There's a gap here and everything else is all connected. So it's all basically one area that's being filled in. If this were done a little bit differently, so this was, oh, I think that's the right button. If this were actually connected together, oops. Okay, so there's no gap here anymore. Maybe I did do it right. Then what happens? I don't know what I did there. All right, now what happens, because this piece is its own subpath, this piece of hair, if I click knockout on it, it's going to knock out just the hair. Okay. The reason it didn't work before was because there was that gap. I'd be able to do the same thing with this front leg if I wanted to. I could knock that out because it's its own little piece. But everything else, all the rest of this is all combined. It's all one filled piece, and so it would knock out all of that together. What knockout does is wherever you click, so you click on the knockout button and then it turns to the crosshair, and wherever you click, it's searching for what's called a subpath. So in this particular instance, if we look at what makes up this design, it's looking for this particular path here of nodes. Even though they're all combined together, it's looking for this subpath, and it finds it and it breaks it apart from the rest of the design. So it's taking this subpath and it's extracting that subpath away from the rest of the design. Okay, so now it's separated from the rest of it. And once it does that, then what it does is it takes and combines it with the black. And by combining it with the black, it then makes it so that this black area is cut out and shows through to what's underneath it. So it's showing through to the polish underneath it. And that works out well if you have a design like this, where the piece that you're knocking out is over the top of the polish. If I had the sheep down here, you're not going to notice any difference because it's only knocking out to show through to what's underneath it, which happens to be frost anyway. So you can't actually tell a difference between the two. The main important thing with the knockout button is to know that you have to end the tool, and you have to end it by hitting the escape button. So if I don't hit escape and I go on to doing other things, trying to change tools and whatever else, it's still stuck in that knockout tool because we haven't ended the tool yet. You have to hit escape on the keyboard in order to end that tool. Otherwise, it'll keep staying in the knockout mode. And so that's really important because what ends up happening is it gets stuck, the code gets stuck in what it's doing. And then, everything else that you did after that ends up messing up. So big reminder, when using knockout, hit the escape key to end it. Anybody not understand what that does?
I was going to ask everybody, since we're all muted, I was just thinking that when Cameron asks a question, we can do a thumbs up or something so everyone hears. But does everyone understand what a subpath is? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Okay, so can you zoom in? Can you pull that that little lamb over to the side and zoom in? And then and give his hair all the, like, give him his hair back or whatever. So he's got a, okay. Now, if you select all that right now, go ahead and grab the outline and the fill of that lamb, please. Okay, I don't know if anyone can see this, but on the very bottom, so do you have both pieces selected, Cameron? The outline, it should be two curves, two objects.
Sorry, I was muted. Did you say to break them apart?
Could you grab both items, the fill and the outline?
Oh, the fill and the outline, yes.
Okay.
They're two objects.
Everybody thumbs up or thumbs down. Can you see down at the bottom where it says two objects selected? Thumbs up. All right, great. Now watch what happens. Cameron, would you please break apart the inside of the lamb and select everything. Now watch what happens down at the bottom. See where it says 17 objects selected? You see that? Now each one of those parts of that component that make up that lamb are all individual pieces. Okay, and we don't want that. Thumbs up, we understand? Okay, yeah, now, yes, exactly. So that's a good way to show it. Now undo that and put it out, there you go. And now combine it, please. And now it's one object. You understand that? Because it's combined, well, it's actually.
It is one combined object.
Okay, so the inside of the lamb is.
Yes, this part is.
Right.
This is still separate.
Okay, so if you combine the whole thing into one entire lamb.
You want to combine everything, you can do that too, yes.
Yeah, and then if you do that and click on it, it's showing the curve. Now, where's all the subpaths though?
So it's not going to show them because it's all one. I mean, if you go to node mode, if you switch the shape tool, then it tells you how many subpaths.
Okay, so when he's not in node mode, we can only see one object because it's all combined, right? Right, okay. But when he's in the editing mode, it's referring to each separate piece that's a closed object or an object that's not closed, like a line. So when you see 17 subpaths, that means that the head, the face, the leg, each piece is a separate object within that unit. Does that make more sense or did it get more confusing? Good.
And,
All right.
and the reason, Julia, the reason they're called paths, I think, is because when you have a cutter that's cutting along that line, it's just like walking a path, right? The cutter's going to start, it's actually going to start at the beginning, which is signified by this little arrow here. It's going to start here and it's going to walk or cut along that path until it comes back to where it started. And this arrow signifies the direction that that path is going. So he's going to walk in a counterclockwise direction. You can reverse the direction of that, and now he's going to go this way instead. That's the way that the cutter is going to walk along that path. But that's why they're called paths. And then the reason that they're sub paths is because we've got multiple combined ones together. And so we've got paths inside paths. Clear as mud, right?
It's just terminology, and after a little while, it just becomes normal to hear that stuff. And eventually you'll find yourself talking to Cameron and you'll say, oh, I'm having a problem with this subpath, because it'll become more common to you. So hang in there. It's just terms you don't use.
Yep. If I wanted to draw more fur or hair or whatever on this guy, I can, draw like this. And now I've got an object, but this is by itself still. So until I combine it with this one, now that I've combined it, it becomes part of that. It takes on those same properties. And now it's considered another path, subpath. So now there's 18 instead of the 17 that there used to be, because I've added another subpath. If I do the same thing, I'm going to draw some more fur and combine that one. Now we're going to have 19 subpaths, because here's yet another subpath that we just created. Make sense?
Kind of. And when the day comes that I use the word subpath on a regular basis, it'll be all good.
One of these days, it's going to happen. It's okay. I probably don't use the word subpath on a regular basis myself. But that's basically what Fill Grayscale and Knockout are doing is, Fill Grayscale is going to take all of these, what were subpaths, all the ones that are inside the largest object, and combine those together, and then just give us a black outline. And Knockout is going to knock out any subpath that you click on. That's what those tools do. Okay. I would like, in a future version of Knockout, to add the ability to let it not only extract that subpath, but then let you decide whether you want it to be combined with the black part or not combined with the black part. Because there are occasions like this where you want that hair or whatever to be a different, you want it to be polished, but you don't want to show through to what's underneath it. So in that case, right now you have to do it manually, where you'd click on the subpath, you'd extract it, and then you would manually take that subpath and fill it in with polish and move it to the front. So that way you're not seeing, you're not seeing the piece that's underneath it. So it's on my list of things to be able to add, is the ability to shift click or whatever the case may be to make it do that kind of functionality, because sometimes that's necessary.
That went right over my head.
Good. That's why you can rewind and watch it again and again and again. Oh, this is Memorial Designer for beginners. I forgot. I thought we were Memorial Designer for experts.
Oh.
Oh, man.
I thought it was Memorial Designer for dinosaurs.
Should be. Should be. Yep. All right. Any questions? Julia, I know it's going to take a while to sink in. And like I said, this is really the biggest thing that I've seen from other people trying to wrap their head around, is exactly what combining and grouping and paths and all that sort of stuff is. So it's okay if you don't get it, at first. I'm going to show you too this text down here. When the text came in and we filled in the text, if I hit fill grayscale on it, it's going to fill the inside of this letter with frost because it's the inside of an object. And so that's the way fill grayscale knows to work, is everything that's on the inside gets, filled with 10% gray. We don't really want that. We don't want this to be separated. We don't want it to be by itself, and we don't want it to be filled in. So in this case, fill grayscale is not the tool to use on text like this, even though this is not text anymore. It's been converted to curves. And so instead of filling grayscale, what we want to do is we want to combine. Combining takes that inside piece, and when it combines it to the outside piece, it makes it so that you see through to what's underneath it. So I'm able to see through and see what's underneath that O. Whereas before, if I used fill grayscale, you wouldn't see the polish underneath it. Okay.
Why wouldn't you use knockout for that?
You can use knockout, but then you have to hit escape to remember to not do that anymore. And it's only going to do it for this particular object, okay? Whereas it's actually faster if I grab all of this together and just hit combine, because it does the same thing, but it's going to make it so that now all of this text is combined together as opposed to each individual letter. So you can do either one, but I would just combine because it's faster.
And the shortcut for combine, if you are writing down shortcuts and you want to start learning those, is Control L.
Which is really hard because I'm usually using the left-hand side of my keyboard, and it's a really long stretch. Like my hand has to go like this in order to hit Control and L at the same time.
Yeah, and for me, I've been using it for so long that like even the fill grayscale isn't, I think that's F.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, what is that, a tool I've never used before? And like, oh, I just use the F button. So everything has a shortcut too. A lot of it does.
Most everything.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, that's a good question though, Julia, on why you would use knockout versus combining, or why you would not use knockout. Most of the time I'm going to, if it's something that ought to be combined together, most of the time I'm going to do it manually. I'm going to combine it. Just like if I had, and it could also be, Julia, because combine existed way before knockout did, and so my brain is still so used to combining things. The knockout tool is a tool that we've created, and really I created it for a specific purpose. So I know to go to knockout for that one specific purpose that we created it for. But if I wanted, for instance, this panel to not be filled, not to be, if I don't want it to be a filled panel anymore, technically I could use knockout on that. I could hit escape, I could come here, change my color and that sort of stuff. But I'm so used to just grabbing my pieces and combining them to do the same thing. And it's, I don't know, it's probably habit. Most of it's probably habit. Okay, so that's knockout. Wow, we're already like an hour in and we've covered 3 buttons. That's pretty good. I'm going to speed run through some of these. All right, I'm gonna speed run. Here we go. So, Shape Builder. When you click on Shape Builder, it pops up a dialog to be able to build your shape. I actually have videos on Shape Builder, so I'm not going to go through the majority of this stuff. That's what it does. Shape Builder is meant for building a shape. I will tease you though and say that we're working on a Shape Builder update. So if there's an existing shape and I click the button again, it says, hey, do you want to replace your existing shape? And I click yes. And then when I change my sizes, it's going to, replace that existing shape if I want it to. Or if I do the same thing and say no, it's going to build a new shape. And that new shape will then be to the right of the existing shape. So this is new code that we haven't released yet because we're still working on it. As you can see, this and this don't line up. So as far as top and bottom, so we're actually making it so that they line up top to bottom.
When is that coming?
Pretty soon.
Okay, question.
I really like that a lot, because for a long time I was creating a new document to make a new shape if I was going to be making, you know, 2 companion monuments.
Yep. And this is all for you, Tammy, because Tammy the other day said, well, why can't I just double click my existing shape? I don't know. Because I'm not Gerber, that's fine.
So how would we have, and maybe this is in your videos and you can tell me, so let's say we want a mountain shape or, you know, I can do these that you already have pre-planned in there, but say I want to make a teardrop, is that in the videos?
No, anything that's custom, you would just draw, okay?
Okay,
Oh,
You would just draw it and then you would fill it in with polish, and now you've got your own shape.
okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Yep, shape builder is
Oh.
really meant just for these basic types of shapes where you've got a SERP top, a half SERP, a rooftop, an oval top, or a flat top. That's what it's built for, is to build those for you.
And there are situations where someone like a company might have particular shapes they like to use. And in that situation, then we could make those shapes for you and you would have them pre-created in the sizes that you wanted. You know, that's just something we offer as well, so.
Would they be in my personal shape builder?
No, they wouldn't be in the shape builder. They would be as like a design, and you would just type in a number or pull it out of a place you'd save those. Like sometimes I'll have a folder that'll say 24-inch monuments, special shapes, and they might have teardrops or, you know, something unique that I've made in the past.
Yeah, so if I go to the classic collection, you'll see that there's one called special shapes. And so these shapes here, all these special kind of shapes, these are not ones that you would build with the shape builder. These are all ones that you would draw, but then save them as files that you can just bring in.
Yeah, and those you could modify if you wanted to. And but if, you know, again, if there's something particular you have and you wanted those replicated, that's no problem, that we can work that out.
Okay, so shape builder, again, you can go back and watch exactly how that works in a different video, so I'm not going to cover the rest of it, but that's what shape builder does. Mirror objects, if I bring in some artwork, okay, and I always use the same dumb bird just because I do, I don't know, but let's bring in this bird here. If I have him in one corner or one side of the stone, I can hit mirror objects and it's going to place it on the other side of my die. The way that mirror objects works is it finds the largest filled object behind whatever your object is that you want to mirror, and then it mirrors on that object. If you have an object that has nothing behind it, so let's say we've got a vase here, and you click mirror objects, it doesn't know what to mirror off of because there's nothing behind it. So then it says, well, select an object to mirror from, and then you click on the object and it would mirror off of that. The last thing that mirror objects does is if you had a panel, for instance, and you had a flower, I'm just going to use the bird because it's here, but let's say you had this bird and you wanted him on both sides of that panel. If I hit mirror objects right now, he's going to go over here because it finds the size of the die. So instead, if I want to force it to mirror on something specific, I can hold Control, click on mirror objects, and now it's waiting for me to click something. So if I click on this, then it's going to mirror just on that particular piece. So mirror objects has 3 different ways that it works. Either finding the largest object, asking you because it can't find something, or control clicking will force it to select a specific object. These are different from Corel's default mirror, which is this one, where it's going to simply mirror on itself as opposed to mirror on something else. Okay. And you know what, Charlie? I think, didn't we the other day talk about making it so that we could mirror it top to bottom too?
Yes.
Did we ever make that happen?
No,
No, we did.
but are you,
I want to say that I did make that happen the other day, but maybe I erased the code that did it.
well, I thought, is this an April Fool's joke? I'm
No,
thinking,
no,
is he
no.
telling me he's got it made and then he's
I
gonna
really,
pull it out?
I had
in
it made. I know I did. I had it made the other day where I wanted to say hold shift.
You
and
wanted
click
a
the
bunch
button.
of people to see a grown man cry on a video.
No, that didn't work. Alt.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, folks, these tools that this program does, it's pretty awesome, because, I've used CorelDRAW before I was even in this industry without this stuff. And it's just amazing that, to be able to flip that really quick and on place exactly where you want it. Wonderful.
I'm gonna look. I think what happened was I had edited my own code to make it work, and then since we've been working on updates, then Shelby's code probably overwrote my code. So I think I lost it. But okay, yeah, not an April Fool's joke. It's something that I want to work on, is so that it mirrors top to bottom as well. Sorry to go on another tangent there, folks. That's what Mirror Objects does. Any questions on that one? No questions? Cool. Okay. Next one is Quick Distribute. Quick Distribute is meant to help you center or evenly space between objects. If I had a panel here and I had my bird here, and I wanted to make sure that the bird was centered between here and here, I can grab him, Quick Distribute, and it's just giving me a left click and a right click option, and it's going to center then between those two clicks. Same thing top to bottom. If I wanted to make sure he was centered between maybe the edge of the stone here and the panel here, then it would center that way. Most often I use this for, like text. If this is, this is an epitaph. So if I've got text and I want to make sure that this text is centered between the panel and my stone, I will Quick Distribute and click on the top and click on the bottom, and then it's going to center between those clicks. Charlie and I were talking about this the other day. One thing to notice or to know about with Quick Distribute is it's going off of the bounding box, which is the size of your object. So if you have a comma in your text, okay,
Or a descender.
or anything that's coming down below your line, it's actually centering based off of the overall size. So if I grab this now and Quick Distribute again, it's going to go a little bit lower because because it's basing it off of that that piece. So if I were doing something that had commas or uppercase letters that go above, ascenders and descenders, basically I would type in a letter H first. So this is very squared off, and then I would distribute my letter H first and then go. So I'll move this out of the way. So I'm going to distribute my letter H first, and then I would just take that text and type it in. And that way I know that it's going to be, equally spaced between there and there.
Hey, one really quick tip about the previous tool, since you have a vase there. If you're placing vases on a monument and you're going to use that because you want the vase to be on the other side, just know that those vases, when you move it, because there's a highlight on those vases, so when you render it, they look like real polish vases, that you're going to flip that.
You're talking about you're going to mirror it here, and then you're going to take this and flip it on itself. So that
just so your light is coming. Otherwise, you have two suns, and that's only on Tatooine.
Yep.
Minor.
Oh, so another thing to know about mirror objects as well, getting back to it, is that it is smart enough to recognize text. So if I had just add some text here. So I'm going to get back to my defaults. Okay, so if I had my name built a panel around my name. Okay, so I'm going to come over here to panels and build a double line panel. So I've got my panel here now. I can use mirror objects to mirror that to the other side, but it's smart enough to know that this is text, and text mirrored doesn't make sense. So the last thing that it does is it remirrors the text so that the text is not going to be backward. Okay, if I had the same panel up here, but this text was no longer text if it was converted to curves. If I did the same thing and mirrored, my text is going to be backward because it doesn't know that it's text. So it doesn't know to remirror that text. Occasionally you've got designs that, maybe have text in them that say like in loving memory and it's in a banner or something, and so cases like that may not necessarily work. You're going to end up with your text backwards or whatever. So just pay attention when you're flipping things, because if it's not text, it's going to end up backwards. Okay. Okay, so quick distribute. Again, it's meant to help you distribute things evenly between clicks. And if I had a die like this, and let's just say I made it really long, okay? So I've got a really long die, and I've got 3 panels, and I want to make sure that there's even spacing between those panels on the die. Then what I can do is I can grab those panels, and I'm going to show you the wrong way first, and then I'll show you the right way. If I grab those panels, and I'll get rid of this text here. If I grab the panels and do a quick distribute from here to here, it's going to say, hey, whoa, those shapes don't fit. Please try again. The reason that those shapes don't fit is this is all individual pieces. It's text, it's panels, there's all a bunch of different things going on there. So what we would want to do first is group. We're going to take each of these and group it. I'm just hitting Control G to group it, or you can come up here and group it. So now instead of individual pieces, we've got 3 groups. Okay. So then those 3 groups, if we wanted to use those and quick distribute between them, then it's going to work correctly. It's going to give us even spacing from here to here to here to here. Okay, because they're grouped objects. If I want to center them on each other, I just hit E on the keyboard to line up all their centers top to bottom. But that's what quick distribute does, is it gives you even spacing between your objects and your clicks. And it goes either left to right or top to bottom, depending on whether or not your clicks are further apart left to right, or if they're further apart top to bottom. So if I did the same thing with these, but did my clicks top to bottom instead, then it's going to give me spacing this way. Okay. And I would just align the centers hitting C, and then you'll see how it's got the same amount of spacing there. But if you ever run into a problem where you've got this not as a group and you're like, well, I want to, distribute it between here and here, and it says, well, there's not enough room, it's because it doesn't fit. Or if there is enough room, but it takes your 2 pieces and separates them from each other, the reason for that is because they're 2 separate pieces. It's acting as 2 separate pieces. So the way you get around that is by grouping them together first, and then you can distribute the group as opposed to distributing each individual object. Okay, that's what quick distribute does. Any questions on that one? Okay. Next to right, this is reverse facings. I'm just going to open up another design because it's easier to do it this way. What reverse facings does is if you notice that your stone, you get ready to produce your stone and you're like, oh shoot, Kathy's actually on the left and Ethan is on the right. Then what you can do is you can grab your stone and hit reverse facings, and it switches it so that everything that was on the left is now on the right. Everything that was on the right is now on the left. It reverses text, and it works based off of your selection. So if you wanted to keep the pine cones on the left, but only switch the panels on the bottom, you can select those panels, shift select your die, and then reverse facings, and it's only going to do those 2 panels. and not the top stuff. But most of the time when you're doing stuff with corner carvings, you know, Kathy's got this over her because she likes that, and Ethan maybe would have, you know, the bird or something up in his side. And so most of the time your corner carvings are going to go with that specific person. And so that's why when you select everything and hit reverse facings, it switches the sides. Okay, so that's what reverse facings is. The next one over is invert selection. This one I don't use very often, but most of the time what I use it for is if I'm drawing something from scratch, a lot of times I will bring in an image and I'll start drawing over the top of that image. So what I'll do is I'll import a picture. Okay, so let's just say I'm bringing in Jesus here or something, and I size it to the size that I want it to be. Okay, and then from there I will start working over the top of my design. But I also like to make it a little bit transparent so that I can work better over the top of it. And if something behind it is getting in my way, then it makes sense to me to just get rid of all that stuff that's behind it. And so what invert selection does is right now I've got this one piece selected. If I invert my selection, it's going to select everything but that one piece. And so then I can come up to object and hide, and it's hiding now everything that I don't want to see, so that when I'm doing my drawing work, you know, I can start coming in here and drawing over Jesus, and do my, you know, my design like that. And then when I'm all done, I get rid of this because I don't need it anymore. And then I just go back up to hide and I say show all, and it's now right where it's supposed to be without anything in the way. Okay, so that's what I use that for most often, is that. There are occasional other times when I want to maybe change text colors or something. I don't know. There's not very many uses for when I use this, but sometimes I do. I'll just grab it and invert my selection so that it grabs everything but that. I don't know. That's what it does though. It reverses what you have selected versus what you don't have selected. Make sense? Okay. Next one over is join curves. So I'm going to come back to one of Brandy's designs here to demonstrate what join curves does. Okay, these Dxf files are all broken up into little pieces. Okay, what join curves does is it tries to find when you've got, let's just say, these pieces here that are broken up, we can see they're 4 different objects. If we join curves, then it's going to join right here, but it's also, because I only selected those ones, it's also joining these ends here. So what it does is it looks for a gap and it tries to fill in where that gap is. On this particular design, join curves is going to do it's kind of weird stuff. And the reason that it's going to do weird stuff is because the way that it's drawn, you can see there's a line that comes up here, okay? And if you look over here in the wings, there's these little things going on, and where your panel meets your angel, you got stuff like that that's going on. And so it's not going to really know where those things ought to be joined because of the way that it's drawn. But if we look at this, it's 682 objects. So if we say we want to join our curve and give it a really small gap tolerance, like 0.05 or something, and we hit apply, then it's going to close all those objects in where it can. And now we're left with 61 objects, which is not nearly as bad as what it was before, right? So it's taken all of those little pieces and joined them together. Okay. And it's only leaving the pieces that still have gaps that are larger than the 0.05. That's what join curves is for, is to take an open shape. So let's just say I've got an open shape, and it is to close that in but it's closing it in based off of a gap tolerance, and it's closing it in based off of how we want it to close in. So there's different options there for how it closes. Before this Docker existed, join curves, we had our own join curves button that we had created. And so that's why this is up on the Memorial Designer toolbar, is because it replaced our existing tool. But it actually is a CorelDRAW default tool. But that's why it shows up on this toolbar, is because we had our own version which did something similar but wasn't as good. It didn't have all the gap tolerance options. It didn't have all the different ways to close. So we just replaced ours with theirs, but I wanted to keep it in line for anybody that used to use our join curves back in the day. But it is just opening up this Docker over here. Okay. Any questions? Okay. The next one over is auto size. Auto size is used for resizing objects so that you can size them to real world proportions. I don't know if I've got a good, I'll find a good example here. Let's see. Memorial Designer, MD. This one here. So when you go out and take pictures of a stone or take pictures in a cemetery or whatever the case may be, I always like to, when I would work on, you know, especially bigger projects. So like this one is a mausoleum that we put out in the cemetery. I wanted to show them exactly how big it was going to be on the lot. So I went out and took a picture of the cemetery, which was like this, okay? But I knew that like for instance, this stone here or this stone here or the base, I knew a physical dimension. And so when I took the picture, it's going to come in, you know, pretty small, however big, or maybe it's going to come in extra large, whatever the case may be, but it's not going to come in as the size that it's supposed to be. So I knew that this stone from here to here was 2 feet tall. Right now it says it's, you know, ½ an inch tall. So I said, I made a reference, shift click what I want to change, hit auto size, and I say, this is 24 inches tall. I'm going to delete my original. I don't need to straighten it in this particular case, and I'm just going to hit apply. And what that does is it resizes the image so that it's now life size. Okay, so now from here to here is however big it's supposed to be. That's the whole idea of auto size, is that you can bring in pictures and make them the size that they're supposed to be so that you can work over the top of them. And so then we were able to take, you know, the mausoleum and stick it in there. And then we were able to take all of the artwork and put it on the mausoleum and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So we laid it all out to life size. Because we're able to use that the auto size tool. And now if we look at this, it's not actually sized the way it really would be. I don't know. I think I had shrunk it down for some reason. But anyway, that's what it's for, is that you can auto size pictures or whatever else in order to make them work. One of the other things that it can do is, so let's say we took Brandy's artwork here, okay? And she told us that her blast width from here to here is 0.078. Well, if we wanted to, we could make that 0.09 inches just by making it larger. So if we shift select this, go to auto size and say, I want this to be a 0.09 inch line, and hit apply, it's going to resize that stone, so 115% larger, so that now that is a 0.09 inch line because it resized it to make it that big. Okay. Sometimes I do that, not often, but sometimes I do in order to make sure that things are sized correctly. You know, if you've got a picture. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so like sometimes a wholesaler will say, I want this, and this, but it's like, it won't fit on that size rock. So in that situation, we could type everything in and then hit auto size, and it would bring me like to the next size. It would show me what size rock it would fit on, right?
No.
Okay,
me. That'd be cool though.
okay.
No, it's
Never mind, forget I have to ask that question.
yeah, no, that wouldn't really work. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, no, it's really, auto size is really meant for resizing existing pieces to a specific size. But you know, if I were to grab this right now, if I started back at where we were, we know it's 20 inches by 10 inches, right? But that doesn't necessarily tell us how big this just the angel from here to here is. And so auto size gives you that ability to make a measurement, you know, from here to here and say, well, I want to make sure that this is 10 inches, and it will resize it so that that particular area of the design is 10 inches, but it's proportionally making everything else larger. But that's really what it's meant for, is just resizing existing stuff to real world dimensions or sizes.
That's a really good question though, you know, and you know, if you think about it, most of your designs, Brandy, are going to be drawn 1-to-1. So the designs are already drawn up, so they're at the perfect size to be sandblasted. And a good rule of thumb is about 10%. So if you have a design like this design and you were going to shrink it down because someone wanted it on a smaller stone, you could just grab the design and tell it to go down to 90%, you know, of that original size. And you're reducing it by 10%. Anything below that, you're looking at either outlining it or redrawing it. You know, you can still put that stuff on a stone to show a family, a monument, like, you know, here's a design that's designed for 36, you want it on 24. Here's what it would look like. Just know that, you know, it's custom now, you know, because we've resized it down so much. Unless you can do stuff a little more complicated, like the angel stays the same, the lamb stays the same size, but we've reduced the panel lines, you know. Does that make sense?
Hopefully it makes sense. All right. Okay. Auto size. In order for auto size to work though, you have to have a reference. So you have to set a reference first, and then you shift select what you want to change, and then you run auto size. Otherwise it's not going to work. Okay. Next one over is line width. This one, basically, if you're drawing and you're just using freehand or whatever the tool is, you know, any of these drawing tools here, they are normally going to just come in as, it's just a single line, and sometimes it's even just hairline, which is, you know, as thin as you can go without any sort of outline applied to it. And so I made this button so that I could draw and then easily turn all of those into my standard sandblast width, which is 0.09 inches. We switched it to your standard line width, which is 0.078. But so if I grab these, then what it does is it's just applying an outline to those to make them 0.09 inches for the outline. Occasionally I draw like this because the nice thing about drawing with an outline is that it's scalable. So if I made a cross, okay, and I wanted this cross to be scalable and work at any size, I could take my cross and I could give it an outline like this, okay? And if I put it on my stone over here, if it is too big or too small, I can resize this, and it actually keeps my V-line at 0.09 inches because it's really just an outline applied to the existing shape. So I can make this as big or as small as I want, and it maintains that 0.09 outline. Okay, so sometimes I draw like that, and I like to quickly, you know, give it the outline that I use as my default. So that's what that's for. is to be able to outline things to a set preset value. Otherwise, you'd have to come up here and choose, you know, your outline width, and you'd have to do that for each object and that sort of stuff. But outline width or line width just simply sets it to 0.09 all the time. Make sense? Okay, Blastable. Blastable is used for resizing when you've got designs and you resize them, you make them smaller or larger. What it does is it helps you to get back to that line width, the V line amount that you want. So as Charlie was saying, if we looked at this design and we looked at how thick this is, you know, it's 0.09 inches, which is the way that it was drawn. But if it were too large for this area and we shrunk it down a little bit to fit inside where we wanted it to, if we look again and see how big that is, because it's actually resizing both pieces at the same time, it's proportionally smaller now. So it's only 0.073 inches. If I wanted to make sure that all of my V lines matched up with each other, then what this tool is for is I can take my existing artwork, resize it, and using this as a reference, I would select the piece I want to resize and hit Blastable. And again, I switched my numbers, so it's not going to do much on this one. I'm going to switch this back by holding Control and clicking on it and switching my default back to 0.09. So now when I run Blastable, it's going to make it so that this V-line thickness is 0.09 instead of the 0.073 that it was before. Okay. And then you can notice here that there's that little piece there that I would want to knock out, and then we're back to normal. That's what Blastable is for, is to resize, or it's to get your V-lines back to the way you want them after you resize things. Not going to work for everything. It's not going to work if you do crazy amounts of resizing. So if I shrink this down to this size and I want it to, you know, be blastable all of a sudden, I guess I've still got my piece here, so I'll grab this one. All right, so if I grab this, which is now 0.037 inches, and try to make that blastable, then it just looks like a blob, right? So it's not magic. It can't perform magic. It can't make bad artwork good artwork all of a sudden. All it's meant to do is help you get your blast lines back to a consistent thickness if you do resize things. But it really depends on the complexity of the design, whether or not it's going to look good or not. If I did the same thing, but with this cross, so if I did this cross instead, you know, the way that I drew this cross is just a single line with an outline applied to it. But if I converted that outline to an object, so now it's the two lines, okay? If I shrunk this down really small to about there, and then I used Blastable to go from here to here, which is 0.029, and reran it and did Blastable, that's what it's going to look like, which isn't horrible, but I mean, it's usable, right? The reason it works is because it's very simple. It's just a bunch of little lines, and you don't have to worry about any detail. So depending on what your design looks like, Blastable may or may not work for what you're trying to do. And depending on how much you've resized it, it may or may not do what you want to do. Okay, make sense? Okay, so I'm just looking at time here. I've got time to cover the rest of the stuff. If you guys don't have the time to cover the rest of the stuff, let me just ask you, do you want to keep going, or do you want to continue on Tuesday with the rest of the stuff? Julie, I'm not sure which one this is. You can unmute yourself, it's fine.
I mean, I need to go because we have somebody coming in.
Okay, and that's perfectly fine. I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and stop here, and we'll cover the rest of this toolbar on Tuesday.
That would be fabulous.
That way it keeps this video from being too long as well. So we will do that. Sorry for not being able to get through everything, but there's a lot of stuff to cover. You know, there's a lot of tools.
There is.
Thank you all.
Nothing to be, yeah, nothing to be sorry for.
You know, it's sometimes I just like to be faster. But that's exciting that you got customers. Go sell, have fun, and we will see you then on Tuesday.
See you Tuesday.
All right,
Yeah, everybody.
Guys.
Bye.
bye.
Bye, everybody.